Salve, Discipuli. Okay, today we're going to focus on one part of the grammar of lesson 54. And that is a verb that is somewhat new to you, but actually also somewhat familiar. And it is very bizarre, so hang in there. You guys know the verb facio, facere, feci, factum already. You know that this verb means do or make. Okay, you've seen it a million times over. Well, what we're actually going to see now is a verb that is in your dictionary entry as fio, fieri, factus. And that word, fio, fieri, factus, essentially is the passive voice of facio, facere, feci, factum. Okay? So this word fio, fieri, which looks a little bit active here, it looks very passive here, it's really bizarre, but it's kind of the passive voice of facio, facere, feci, factum. So if facio, facere, feci, factum means do or make, this new word fiero, fieri, factus, as a passive form, can mean be made, right? Because that's the passive of make. But it can also, strangely, mean become or happen. And maybe that's not so strange, because if you do something, the passive form is it happens, right? It is being done, so it happens. If you make something, it is being made, so it's becoming. So maybe it's not so completely strange. But long story short, fio, fieri, factus can mean be made, become, or happen. All right? So what does this word look like? Do not be confused. Do not be confused by this thing that I've given you here that shows passive here. Okay? Remember, that's just telling you that fio, fieri, factus is the passive form of facio. What we really need to do is just look at fio or fieri, factus here, and remember it can mean be made, be done. I'm sorry, be made, become, or happen. So, right now we're looking at the present tense of fio, fieri, factus. It goes fio, fis, fit, fimus, fitus, fiunt. Okay, and you should pause right now and write that in your notebooks. That's the present indicative of fio, fieri, factus. Fio, fis, fit, fimus, fitus, fiunt. Next, we have the imperfect. No surprise here. I mean, it's a little weird, but it shouldn't be too much of a surprise. It goes fie bam, fie bas, fie bat, fie bamis, fie batis, fie bant. You should pause the video and write this in your notebook. So this would mean I was becoming, it was happening, right? We were being made, so on and so forth. Whereas in the present tense, you have I am being made, it is happening, so on and so forth. All right? So there's your present tense, your imperfect. Next, we have, let's go green. We have our future tense. Okay, right here. Basically, you'll see this looks a little bit like a third conjugation verb. Fiam, fies, fiet, fiemus, fietus, fient. You should pause the video and write that in your notebook. So this is how you say, I will become, I will happen. It's kind of unusual, but you could do that. It will happen. All right? We will be made. So there you have your present, your imperfect, and your future. That's the hardest part about this. Okay? That's the hardest part. So hang in there a second, and it's actually going to get easier. Remember, we're still looking at fio, fieri, factus. Now, we're still in the indicative. Here, here's going to be your perfect passive. I say passive, but fio, remember fio, fiere is basically always passive. But here's your perfect tense, okay? And the thing about this is, it's not going to be unfamiliar to you at all. You're going to be like, oh, factus sum, I haven't seen that forever. Factus est, I've seen that forever, okay? And you're going to notice that it's the same with your pluperfects right here. Factus eram, factus eras, I've seen that stuff for a long time. And then down here in your future perfect, factus ero, factus eris, so on and so forth. This is totally familiar too. Okay, why? Because it basically here just looks exactly like the passive form of facio, facere, feci, factus. So all you need to be aware of here is that these can be translated as I have been done, all right, which you already knew, or they could have the new meaning of I have become, or I have happened. Kind of unusual. Works better in the third person, right? It has happened. Like a factum est. It has happened, or it has become. Let's consider the future tense. Factus eram. I'm sorry, the pluperfect tense, excuse me, the pluperfect. I had been made. Okay, so there's the pluperfect. So all that's really happening here is you have the factus forms that you already knew, and you already knew they could mean be made or be done, but now you just have to be aware they can also mean become or happen. All right? Might be a little bit confusing, but the forms are not new. So let's scroll down. Now we're going to look at our subjunctives. Okay, as always, the subjunctive list is shorter because there's no future or future perfect. So down here we have our present subjunctive. We have our imperfect subjunctive, my favorite form ever. We have our perfect subjunctive and our pluperfect subjunctive. The only ones I really need you to write down are the present and the imperfect. So let's start with the present subjunctive. You have fiam, fias, fiat, fiamus, fiatus, fiat. Go ahead and pause the video and write those 6 forms down. These should not be that tricky. They have the IA in there, which we remember from our we beat a liar, friar. Okay, so they're kind of like third conjugation IOs or something like that, like facio, facio, facero. Makes sense. The imperfect subjunctive kind of starts with the infinitive. Remember, the infinitive for this word is fieri. So they take the F-I-E-R, and then they have an E instead of an I, and then they add their endings. So you end up with fierem, fieres, fieret, fieremus, fieretus, fierent. There's your imperfect subjunctive. Go ahead and pause this and write that down in your notebooks. And back in action here. When you get to the perfect subjunctive, it's kind of what you would expect. It goes back to that factus, and then you add either sim, sis, sit for the perfect, or sm, essays, esset. You do not need to write that down because it should be pretty familiar to you. This is what I want you to have down in your notebooks. All right? That's the subjunctive. Notice I'm not really giving you much of a translation because the subjunctive translation depends on context. But I will give you one thing. How about this? Fiat lux. What does this mean? Maybe you've heard this before. So here's your present subjunctive for fio. Here's lux. This is let light be made. Or let there be light. Let light happen. So there's one example of a present subjunctive. All right, we're almost done. I'm going to scroll down for a brief moment and see that there are infinitive forms of this word. No big surprise. Actually, I'm going to scroll a little more. Notice there's no imperative to worry about. You can't tell someone, hey, you, become, or hey, you, happen. Just can't do it. There's the infinitive fieri, which we already saw as part of the dictionary entry, to become or to be made or to happen. Then there's factus esse. So this would be your perfect infinitive. And this simply means to have become or to have been made. So here's present infinitive, perfect infinitive. All right? Those are pretty self-explanatory, I believe. And then down here you have stuff you don't need to know yet. So we are officially done with the grammar introduction. That's all I have to say. Hopefully you got the stuff I asked you to get in your notebooks, because I can always quiz you on it. Walete, Discipuli.